So, was it worth it? Abso-fucking-lutely. I would wait 10 years over to get a record as good as this. Hi guys, welcome back, and hello if you are new. 10 years ago, we got gifted the album that is literally one of my favourite progressive death metal albums in probably a decade, in the form of Sun Eater. And just as brilliant as it was that it appeared, the band pretty much disappeared straight away. Aside from a couple of sort of sporadic live shows, there wasn't really kind of much going on until 2023, when we got the Agony Seeping Storm, the first example of new music from Job for a Cowboy in basically 9 years. And then finally, we found out that they would be following up Sun Eater with Moon Healer 10 years later, well, almost 10 years later. And I'm so excited to tell you that this album is absolutely fucking amazing. So, if you might not be familiar with Job for a Cowboy, they are a death metal band. And they're a death metal band that have redefined themselves with every release. Slowly but surely kind of honing, tweaking. Ever since 2007's Genesis, you know, into Ruination, then we had Demonocracy. And it was that jump from Demonocracy to Sun Eater that really created, you know, I think, a band that really do stand atop, you know, the modern death metal crowd. So picking up exactly where Sun Eater left off, Moon Healer is a record that works in tandem with that previous release. Thematically, the record looks at the idea of someone who has been experimenting with drugs in order to create essentially a new path of consciousness. You know, I think it's such a interesting kind of, interesting canvas for the band to play with, really, because you know, once you've got this sort of world where you can kind of make anything happen, really it does kind of destroy any boundaries that you might have had. And whereas Sun Eater looked at more of a macro kind of perspective, Moon Healer is more of a micro perspective and is more focused on this individual. And despite the concept being quite tricky to get your head around, I think the bands tell it in a really interesting and easy to access way. You know, literally the album starts on with Beyond the Chemical Doorway, which literally sounds like, you know, you're opening a door into this world, and ends with the Forever Rot, which for me kind of echoed that idea of samsara, you know, the eternal cycle kind of thing. I might be completely wrong, but that's the kind of vibe that I got. And one of the first impressions that I got listening to Moon Healer for the first time is that it's a decidedly slower and very much darker record. It's also very dense, you know, it's not necessarily a record that I immediately kind of clicked with straight away. There's a lot of work, I think, that you have to kind of put into it. And as much as initially I was a bit sort of like, this isn't exactly what I expected, I'm really glad that it wasn't, you know, Sun Eater 2.0, because that's exactly what I wouldn't want from Job for a Cowboy. There's a sense of familiarity within the feeling of Moon Healer, but it's also pushing new boundaries at the same time. Moon Healer is a very dark album, and it's entrenched in atmosphere. And with that in mind, I feel like it's almost like the musical walls are kind of breathing and moving all at the same time. I know that sounds really abstract to kind of say, but I think when you listen to it, you'll really get what I mean. And to create that sort of world, I think the band have relied on three things, which is melody, structure, and effects. I think the melodies are often sort of in that diminished, augmented sort of style of things. You can see it on A Sorrow-Filled Moon, which adds to that sort of slightly unresolved aspect of what melodies might be expected. And where structure is concerned, you know, it can be hard to kind of keep up with the album, because often it will end unexpectedly, you know, for the ending of a song, for example, like the Agony Seeping Storm, or there'll be a structure change which you hadn't really anticipated, and it really kind of works almost like a train of thought, stream of consciousness kind of vibe. It's not necessarily traditional songwriting, and the effects only kind of compound that. You know, you've got kind of melting words at the end of Grinding Wheels of Ophanim, but then you've also got the end of Beyond the Chemical Doorway, which has this sort of it's almost like a backwards sounding melody of like a thing sort of like looped, I guess, but then also has like this homing beacon, which gives that sort of idea of being adrift in this sort of sea of consciousness and not really kind of knowing what's going on. It's very psychedelic, it's trippy, there's elements of things that you do recognize, but it's kind of been warped. You've got tracks like The Sun Gave Me Ashes, So I Sought Out the Moon, and Into the Crystalline Crypts. Those two songs are very dissonant, very strange, and kind of do kind of have like feet in jazz, I think, ever so slightly. I would also go as far as to say this is definitely the most technical the band have ever sounded, and every single member of the band here is on their A game 100%. Nick Shenzielos, you know, of course, he's a fantastic bass player, but I love the fact that there's that sort of like funky sort of slap bass in here, but at times he can also become a bit like a lead guitarist, and then when needed kind of comes back into lock in that groove when that does kind of sporadically appear. And where drums are concerned, you know, Naveen Coppervice couldn't have been a better choice. It's honestly a testament to how versatile of a drummer he is, and, you know, he's able to navigate moments of technical fury on Grinding Wheels of Ophanim. You know, you can see this on the Agony Seeping Storm. Those first moments kind of show his light and free playing, but then he mobilizes and becomes, you know, straight ahead, this kind of rhythmic killing machine, which just goes absolutely mental. Now, personally, I don't know if you guys have seen this on my channel before, but I absolutely love Tony Sanacandro, Al Glassman. You know, the two are a match made in heaven. And although Tony Sanacandro's signature whammy bar knocks aren't quite as dominant this time, I think he uses the whammy bar in even more of an interesting way to kind of emphasize those dynamics and change sections and make it even more fluid to, again, add to that sense of this sort of amorphous, weird kind of world swirling around. And then, of course, there's his solos. You know, I think, if anything, he's now got even more versatility and variety in the way that he phrases things, in the way that, you know, he's playing different ideas. Etched in Oblivion and Grinding Wheels of Ophanim are probably two of my favourite solos of his, but I think Into the Crystalline Crypts is probably the most inventive solo that I've heard from him before, using different tonalities and different ideas that would maybe not necessarily I would have associated with his playing in the past. And then there's Johnny. You know, Johnny hasn't missed a beat. Honestly, this guy is absolutely fantastic and still proves that he's one of the most versatile death metal vocalists out there. And I think special sort of praise needs to be given for the sort of like percussive element, you know, because he's delivering these vocals that are alongside riffs, which like, you know, it's like, it's incredibly hard to get that right. But because of the way he's like, obviously I can't do any vocals, but he totally nails that. And I think also because it's a bit slower, you can understand exactly what he's saying. And that's another thing, the lyrics on this album are incredible. You know, to be able to paint this world of the unseen that we can't even kind of even imagine. He's just done an absolutely phenomenal job. So was it worth it? Abso-fucking-lutely. I would wait 10 years over to get a record as good as this. With Moonhealer, Job for a Cowboy have capitalised on their evolution from Sun Eater, and by doing so have crafted an entirely unique sonic universe and once more an indelible modern death metal masterpiece. So for that reason, I'm going to give this album a 10 out of 10. Absolute masterpiece. Cannot miss it. If honestly, incredible. So I hope you guys enjoyed this album review. Let me know what you think of the video in the comments underneath me. Also make sure to check out my interview with Johnny Davey, where he lifts the lid on all things Moonhealer and how it sort of interconnects with Sun Eater and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys very soon for another album review. Take care, my friends.